All right, hello everybody. My name is Michael Levy. I am the CEO and founder of the Work Proud service, part of the WAPS companies that have been in business since 2002. Would like to thank everybody for taking some time today. For those enjoying the lunch, enjoy. Want to acknowledge that we're in a difficult time. I hope everybody is doing as well as possible, whether that's personal, family, friend, professionally, health, or some of the other issues that we've seen come up of late. I think we're in a period towards the end of the bad side and hopefully heading to some good side, and that we can look back at this period of history and be proud of how we handled ourselves and how actually even as a society maybe some good things will come out to it. I'm a glass half full kind of character, so that's what I tend to do. I'm going to share some knowledge, skill, and experience today. It's part of a HR innovation series that we do every 2 to 3 weeks. We'll bring in an interesting speaker to share some perspectives around the topic of how to help make people proud of the work they do and proud of the company they work for. It's our view and belief that that sense of pride and purpose is a key driver to engagement, to outcomes, and even to the level of personal satisfaction. So briefly, this bit about me. Started the business in 2002. It's an Australian accent you're hearing, so don't be surprised, even though it sounds like a Southerner. But I've been living in Dallas, Texas, proud to be an American as well. Since 2002, been involved in the construction, creation of some 450 plus programs, various sized organizations from big globals, to smaller operations. And an observation, throughout that 18 years, became apparent, and it is around that we're going to talk. And I've asked Jill to share some of her perspectives and expertise with you today, and that is something that you've observed yourselves. But it's a nice reminder. You have 2 employees, Bruce and Brenda, Bruce and Bill. We've got the same age, same background, same demographics, same training, same geographies, same compensation plan, basically. And one of them is a high performer, a contributor, a positive energy and influence, somebody who steps up when there's a challenge. If they see something wrong, they go to fix it. And then you've got the other character, which is if they see something's wrong, they try and avoid it. They're quiet. They don't want to step up and say, I'll do that, I'll take that on, I'll try and innovate. And the question becomes, why? What's the difference? And my observation is, well, the difference is they don't want to. Right? Question is, well, why don't they want to? Well, if pay, training, education, background, and everything else is exactly the same, what's that missing, ingredient? And I think the missing ingredient is, I want to. Right, that's self-motivation. Right? I want to do this because I think it's not just the right thing to do, but it's in my nature, and I want to access it. And we observe that can be quite a large delta. Right? That discretionary effort, that desire to work, to be proud of their work, and it doesn't take an expert, but it's always good to have validation. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Harvard Business Review, in their studies and analysis, said that businesses with clearly defined values and purpose that employees can connect to see 90% growth and profits at or above the industry average, and 65% of their employees said they were passionate about their work. So the Work Proud service is around trying to answer a question that says, how do you make people proud of their work on a day-to-day basis and proud of the company they work for? For if you can solve for that, and providing that you've got fair and reasonable pay, training and education, the tools to be successful, you are going to have a successful model. So to that end, we like to bring, as I said, some interesting speakers and presenters who may have had some experience and perspective on a topic such as that. And in this case, I'd asked Jill to come and talk with us. Jill is a former Fortune 500 business executive, so she has the commercial background. She's also a Six Sigma green belt. Jill knows the inner workings of organizations and how to, both from a talent attraction and a retention standpoint. She's a speaker and consultant. We'll provide Jill's contact details. I know she does corporate work and she's excellent at doing that. She's also got a book, If Not You Who, a global bestseller. She's also got a popular blog. You can register for that on her website. So Jill, thanks for agreeing to be part of today and sharing your knowledge, skill, and experience. And to the audience, I'm proud to pass Jill over to you. I think she's got a lot to share and you'll get a lot out of this. All the best. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you so much, Michael. I am absolutely thrilled that you are joining us today because work as we know it has changed forever. And many times in life when a major change occurs, it means that we must reinvent ourselves, not only in order to survive, but to thrive. And so how is this webinar going to help you? And that's very simple. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how your managers can manage remote workers effectively so they show up every single day and give you the best version of themselves. And why is this such an important topic? There are two primary reasons. First, according to the Gallup organization, currently 61% of workers are now working remotely full time. And so I'd love to start out with a poll and see whether or not that is tracking with your organization up or down. So Jim, could we please run the poll to ask people what percentage of your employees are working from home full time? And if you don't know, just take a guess. Okay, so again, the US is around 61% full-time, and if everyone could just select one of those options, we can see where we are in terms of tracking with the Gallup numbers. I should mention that before COVID-19, 25% of US workers were working remotely, but not full-time, typically between 3 to 4 days a week. Perfect. So it looks like the vast majority of you are over 67%. So you're tracking actually higher than the US average, but this does not surprise me one bit. And so again, this content is so critical because the vast majority of workers are working full time. And secondly, this is an incredibly important topic because employee engagement is everything. Employees who are engaged trust leaders and they feel an emotional connection to your company. And because of this, they go above and beyond the call of duty and give you a lot of discretionary effort. And so, as Michael said, when people give you a lot of that discretionary effort, it also means that they beam with pride, they are executing, their productivity is absolutely through the roof. And that's one of the major reasons why employee engagement matters. So your employees go to work every single day and they have a choice. They can show up and just go through the hamster wheel and do what they have to do to get by, or they can give you every single thing they've got inside of them and then some. We call that 110% discretionary effort. It's that or it's scraps. How an employee is treated and the culture in which they are being asked to do their job has a major bearing on the choice that they make. So a huge question that people ask me is, Jill, are remote workers really as productive at home as they are in an office setting? And the answer to that question is yes. However, our remote workers are telling us that they absolutely feel more disengaged and neglected. And the way to stop this from happening is by executing on a strategy to engage your remote workers, which I'm really pleased to be sharing with you today. Because when you understand this one thing, how to effectively manage your remote workers will make complete and utter sense to you. And here it is. If you create a culture where your remote workers' needs are met, they will give you their all. And so I want you to really let that sink in. In other words, for the most part, if a worker thinks you're making them a priority, they will make you a priority and stay engaged, enthused, and effective, giving you every single thing they've got. But on the flip side of that, If a worker's needs are not being met, their loyalty will drop and they will disengage, disconnect, and do the bare minimum just to get by. Because let's face it, it would be incredibly simple right now for your employees to disengage. Working from home full time brings with it a lot of distractions, and there are also millions of things going on in our world right now that people could turn their time and attention to. If your employees do not feel important, embraced, and supported, you risk them checking out. So you've got to be deliberate about creating an environment that meets or exceeds their needs. So, about now, I'm guessing that some of you might be thinking that because organizations are furloughing and laying off workers, thanks to COVID-19, that your employees are going to be on their best behavior and give you their all because they don't want to lose their job, right? It would make a lot of sense to be thinking that. However, I'm going to share some very interesting data with you. These organizations are hiring in droves, and not just for manual worker positions. When you bring on tens or hundreds of thousands of new employees, you must also bring on white-collar managers, leaders, and corporate center employees to support them. But wait, my friends, we are not done. There's more. These organizations are also hiring en masse. They just didn't divulge the numbers. But I can tell you that when I look across this list of 40 organizations, there are many here that are in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement. And so we're talking about organizations that are scoring around 90% engagement when the average score in the United States is a measly 34% engagement across all industries. Many of these organizations who are currently hiring have amazing workplace cultures where they put their people first. So their people put their customers first, and they solidify their long-term success because their customers keep coming back for more. And so I hope the takeaway from these past two slides is that now is not the time to rest on your laurels and think that your employees are going to stay put thanks to COVID-19. Regardless of what is going on in the world, if an employee's needs are not being met at work, they will disengage, they will give you scraps, and many of them will check out, and some will even tender their resignation notice because they can. As you can see from these slides, people still have options, and many of these options are great ones. We're talking about some great, amazing companies on this list. So let's dive into how you can stop this from happening. So in order for you to get the most out of your remote workers, there are 3 areas where your managers need to address. And I've made it really simple for you to remember. It's just the 3 C's. And we're going to start with the importance of connection and concrete ways for you to establish this for your remote people. Second, we're going to dive into communication and specific tips to be incredibly effective. Then we're going to move on to collaboration and strategies to get people to partner regardless of physical distance before we move into your questions. And so some of you might be thinking about now, Jill, there is no way that all of my remote workers have these 3 needs since people are different. But what I've learned through all of the research that I conducted to write my book and my decades of business experience is that people are not different. At their core, all of your employees are human beings, and human beings are wired similarly. They have the same needs. What engages and inspires me engages and inspires you. And what deflates and demotivates you deflates and demotivates me. And so I'm going to share a little bit of evidence to back this up. So here we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a psychology theory that was proposed 80 years ago. And okay, I fudged it a little, I cheated. This is the new and improved COVID-19 version, but this diagram should still look incredibly familiar to you. So Maslow set out to create a diagram which shows the universal needs of society at its base, and then it proceeds up to more acquired emotions. They say that only about 5% of people in the world ever really get to that red box at the top, the triangle. This is where like monks, yogis, people like that typically realize self-actualization. For us, it's a little more of a difficult challenge to get there, but it's absolutely doable. And so what Maslow laid out is how human beings behave and what they need. Note what he didn't say. He didn't say what baby boomers need, or what employees in India need, or what employees in the retail industry need. He said, this is what all people need. All human beings have similar physiological, safety, social, and esteem needs. And again, when these needs are met, we have the ability to potentially get to the place of self-actualization. So unless you disagree with Maslow, we're kind of on the same page that all human beings have similar needs. So when we talk to hundreds of thousands of remote workers and they tell us we need the 3 C's, it's safe to think that the remote workers who we didn't talk to need the 3 C's as well. So we're going to go on to our next poll because I would love to know what you're thinking in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Jim, if you could please bring this up. So we'd love to know to what extent you agree with Maslow. So do you agree that, for the most part, human beings have similar needs? People have similar needs, regardless of their age, their location, their industry, their education. Would love to hear what you're thinking. Perfect. And so, and I hope I didn't skew the results in any way, but I'm with you guys as well. You know, human beings really are wired similar. The differences are not the way people think they are, even between the generations. And I would guess that between industries and between countries, people would probably say that it's not there where people differ the most. It is in the generational differences. But again, even there, it's not that different. What I have found is with the generations, they all have similar needs. Where they differ is that they have different values, right? And so people tend to, in older generations, value leadership and loyalty. People tend to, in the younger generations, value things like autonomy and unlimited time off. Okay, so that's how I look at, if you're thinking, well, Jill, what about baby boomers and millennials? Again, it's their values that really differ, not so much in their needs. And so let's dive into these 3 areas because, again, folks, you cannot leave this to chance. If your managers get this right, your remote workers will be productive, engaged, and effective. So, truth number 1, your remote employees tell us they need connection. When we ask people, why do you get out of bed and go to work in the morning? 80% of people around the globe say, because I want to add value. I want to make a difference. I want to add meaning to the world. I want to be connected to something bigger than myself. And I'm sure this is probably resonating with you because I know that it resonates with me, right? I want to figure out why I'm here. I want to make a difference. And it's no secret that when you physically disperse people, this sense of connection diminishes. And, I think a lot of us didn't even realize that pre-COVID, because we took it for granted that we were all physically co-located. And so because of that, there was a built-in connection, but we really didn't even sense that it was there. But I can tell you that the vast majority of my neighbors and friends are now all working from home, and virtually every single one of them has said the same thing to me. And that's that they cannot believe how disconnected and isolated they feel from their workplace and their coworkers. There is just something about being physically co-located with other people that causes them to feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And so a great example that I hope you can all resonate with is a live concert or a sporting event. So I want you to think about a time when you attended a live event with tens of thousands of other people who were actually strangers, right? You didn't even know the vast majority of people around you. But when that performer sings his or her amazing #1 hit, or when that larger than life athlete scores, you feel this deep sense of camaraderie and connection with thousands of people in the stadium, people who you don't even know. And the reason why that happens is because you were all moved by the same thing. You all felt a part of something bigger than yourself, and it felt good and it caused you to bond. But with remote working, we've lost that. So, in the absence of being physically connected to one another, your managers must create that connection in other ways. And how can they do that? Here are 7 concrete ideas that they can do to drive connection amongst your remote workers. Now, I'm not going to read this list to you. And as you can see, there's just keywords on this list. At the end of the webinar, you're going to receive a URL that lists out connection, communication, and collaboration, and the 7 manager action items in each of those 3 key areas. And they are going to be listed out in sentence format so you understand exactly what these 7 things are. So you don't have to take copious notes or take a picture of this slide. You're going to get a 1-page follow-up where you can easily understand what all of these things mean. But the 2 that I'm going to focus on today in connection, the creating a team goal and team recognition. And so one of the easiest ways to make people feel connected is to create a team goal that everyone is responsible for achieving together. And this goal will be especially powerful if it's in support of one of your CEO's goals. Why? Because if you create a team goal that is aligned to the vision of your CEO, people will feel like they are walking together with their peers, arm in arm, forward toward the same North Star, forward toward your organization's goals, forward toward your organization's objectives. They will feel connected to something bigger than themselves, and they will feel like they're making a difference and adding value and having meaning, working on a critical team goal, more so than if they're sitting at home on an island working on their individual goals and objectives that are aligned with their job description. And so we've got a great story to emulate this in the United States history. So in the early 1960s, our former president, Kennedy, as most people know, wanted the United States to be the first country to set foot on the moon. And so Kennedy went to the NASA space station in Cocoa Beach, Florida, to learn about the mission, the vision, to see the spacecraft being built. And as Kennedy was walking through the halls, he came across an employee who happened to be a janitor. And Kennedy said to the janitor, "What do you do here?" And the janitor replied, "I help put men on the moon." The janitor didn't say, "I help clean toilets." The janitor said, "I help put men on the moon." And the reason why he responded that way is because at that time, NASA's leadership team got it. They understood the importance of creating a shared goal, a shared mission, a shared vision for all of their employees that people could rally around. Trust me, I've never met this janitor. There is no doubt in my mind that he is the janitor in the world with the most pride, with the most engagement, right? With the most dedication, with the most productivity. And so again, so critical for you to create that team goal, get people rallied around something bigger because it will drive massive levels of connection. Second, we've got team recognition. So it is no secret that in our new world of work, physical has been replaced with remote and online. Many of us are now conducting business solely online, so it stands to reason that the most effective way to recognize people is via an online recognition platform. In addition, your managers need to be aware and spread the wealth around. Highlighting team accomplishments satisfies the need for connection and employees feeling like they are a part of something bigger than themselves. It can go such a long way versus the individual recognition. And another benefit of having an online platform is that in addition to enabling managers to recognize team members for their extraordinary accomplishments, it also enables all of your team members to recognize one another. And we know from employee engagement survey results that employees feel that peer recognition is a huge driver of employee engagement. And so I call this building a culture of rampant recognition. It's not where your managers just recognize individuals or where your managers can only recognize the people on their teams. It's where your managers can recognize team accomplishments. It's where everyone on the team can recognize one another. And trust me when I say that it drives massive level of team trust, pride, and teammate connection. And so now let's move on to connection. So another major need of your remote workers, communication. So here's the deal, folks. 50% of American workers are millennials and Gen Zs. In 5 years, by 2025, 75% of the workforce will be made up of millennials and Gen Zs. These people were born with a smartphone in their pocket coming out of their mother's womb. It's the truth. And because of this, they bombard people with communications, and they're used to being bombarded with communications. They are comfortable with that. It's the norm. They expect it. They appreciate it. They love doing it. And then they're going to show up in your organization and they're going to hear from the CEO once or twice a year, and they're only going to talk to their manager once a week during a staff meeting, maybe, and nobody is going to ask for their opinion. You guys, gone are the days where you can just push content out to your employees. You have got to be engaging people in communication. They need two-way communication. And we also know employees tell us that when they're kept in the loop about what's going on, when they have a voice at work and they think their voice is being heard, they report higher levels of employee engagement. And why is this? Because when leaders and managers share information and seek out the thoughts, the dreams, the ideas, the hopes, and the wishes of employees, it causes them to trust leaders and drive that emotional connection that the employee feels between themselves and the organization. And the definition of that is employee engagement. And so how can your managers feel the need for communication? Here are 7 proven action items to ensure the lines of communication are open and flowing. And the 2 that I want to focus on today are the team huddles and focus groups. So, team huddles. Your managers need to be leading a daily or a weekly brief team huddle in the morning or in the PM for all available team members. This is not something that's mandatory, because the minute you tell people it's mandatory, they're going to check out, they're going to feel like they're being told what to do. People don't like the word mandatory. So you say to people, we were going to start having a weekly or whatever that is, a daily team huddle. Want to invite every single person to attend so that we can all talk and check in with one another. In the morning, if you've got a morning team huddle, great opportunity for people to share what's on their work plate for that day, and potentially to even ask other team members for assistance or their thoughts or their ideas or their guidance. If you have your team huddle at the end of the day, that's an excellent opportunity for the manager to, or people on the team, to share what they were proud of that day. What did they do that make them feel really good? It's also a great opportunity at the end of the day for a manager to recognize employees for their accomplishments, for their achievements. A team huddle is also an extraordinary time for a team manager to share with employees information from higher up that only they're privy to. Because as we know, in many organizations, cascading communications are the norm. So the senior leaders decide something, they tell the management team, and then managers are responsible for cascading that. Your daily huddle can be, or your weekly huddle can be something where employees know they're going to get good information that they're not privy to yet. They're going to get to recognize their colleagues. They're going to be able to talk about what's on their plates. It is an amazing way for people to communicate with one another, to give people a voice, and for people to know their voice is heard. They can participate or not, but at least the option is there. Second idea, focus groups. Gone are the days when it's okay for you to only communicate to employees. In order to keep remote workers feeling engaged, upbeat, and inspired, you must communicate with employees. We call this two-way communication. And why wouldn't you want to do this? Your employees are in the trenches and they're closest to your customer. They know exactly what's going on in your business. And many times they have creative ideas about how to improve, solutions to fix what's broken, thoughts about how to generate additional revenue without laying off employees, ideas about what your next product or service could be. They've got all kinds of stuff, great stuff going on inside of their heads, but they're not going to share it with you unless you ask them, because it's not human nature to speak up. And you're also going to breed active disengagement if you don't give people a voice and let them know their voice is heard, because we know, employees tell us, that the worst thing a manager or a leader can do is to make a decision that impacts team members without asking for or seeking their input. So I'm not advocating that every decision in a company is run by employees for their vote, because you'd never get anywhere, and I'm all about execution. But there are definitely opportunities for your managers to hold a focus group to gather input about some decision that's going to be made. So for instance, let's say your organization is thinking about changing its benefits plan for 2021. Rather than HR or the senior leadership team going into a conference room, doing an RFP, and figuring out who the no benefits provider is going to be, and then declaring that, it is much more effective for you to create a focus group. Let everybody in your company know, we're thinking about changing our benefits provider next year. If you're interested in chiming in, we want to hear from you. Here are the conference calls that you can dial into. Here are the conference rooms that you can go to physically. We want to know, what do you like about our current provider? What do you not like? What benefits do you use? What do you not use? What new benefits would you like to see? Trust me when I tell you, when you roll out your new benefits plan next year and you say, thank you for your input. You spoke, we listened. Here's our new benefits plan. Here's what it contains. Here's what it does not contain, and why. And my friends, that why is a critical piece. So many times when decisions are made in organizations, nobody communicates the context, the why. When you share with somebody why a decision was made, it will land on them so much better. People are a lot more flexible than you would imagine. It is absolutely okay that you do not execute on every single thing that you heard from your employees in that focus group. It is absolutely not okay for you not to ask, for you not to seek out their opinions. Got it? I think you do. On to the next one, collaboration. So, truth number 3, remote employees tell us they want to collaborate. What is the definition of collaboration? This is when a group of people come together and contribute their expertise for the benefit of a shared objective, project, or mission. Remember, people yearn to feel connected to something bigger than themselves. It's a critical need of all human beings. And so when you create opportunities for people to collaborate, to come together and contribute their expertise for a shared purpose, you're not only enabling the collaboration, you're also fulfilling their need for connection and for increased communication. Additionally, we know that collaboration helps people who are physically alone to better problem solve, to learn from one another, and communicate more often, which we know boosts morale, knowledge, discretionary effort, productivity, and engagement. So what are the 7 ideas that I have for you? Here they are. And the 2 that I want to highlight are assigning problems to fix and reward collaborative behavior. So first, there is this phenomenon that happens in business where employees who physically sit beneath a manager's nose, or the employees who are the high performers, are the people who get asked to lead all the high profile projects and to solve the high profile problems. We've got a name for this, my friends. It's called the halo effect. It's where in business the same people are chosen again and again and again. And I have an example for you. I want you to think back to, and it might be not a fun memory. Think back to gym class in school, okay? PE class. Do you remember when the PE teacher would say, Susie, Bob, and John, you're the 2 leaders of the teams. They pull those 2 people out of the line. Everyone else is left standing there. And then Susie, Joe, and Bob get to choose from the line the people who they want on their team for that day's sport. Okay. I remember standing there and wishing and hoping that I would not be the last person to be chosen. And I was fortunate in that I was big in sports. And so I was usually chosen first. So I never really felt what that was like. But then once I was chosen, I remember standing there behind the team captain and feeling so bad for the people who were chosen last because you could see it in their face. They had lost their inspiration, they had lost their engagement. And so this is the type of phenomenon that we set up in the business environment, the halo effect. The same people are chosen to be the captains in PE class. The same people were chosen first, right? To be on the captain's team. This is what we do in businesses. And I've got to tell you, it disengages the employees who are never selected, causing them to feel deflated and to be less productive. Your managers must trust your remote workers to fix high profile problems, and they've got to be spreading the wealth around by not selecting the same employees to lead over and over and over again. If your managers assign a major problem to a small group of remote workers to tackle together, you're going to drive both collaboration and engagement because the manager is basically saying to those employees, I trust you. Because when your manager calls you out and gives you something important to work on, it feels incredible. And if you're working with a handful of people on that issue or problem, again, collaboration is coming into play. You'll get a better result out of it, and it will again inspire your workers. Second, in collaboration, rewarding collaborative behavior. So there's a workplace truism, you get what you reward. Employees who collaborate effectively must be held up as role models. In our new world of remote work, it would be very easy for your employees to remain on their own little islands and not partner and not collaborate. However, we all know that in order to maximize business results, people must seek out multiple perspectives and partner. It's why diversity is such an important thing in our business and in our world. So when you see people doing this, collaboration must be rewarded, recognized, and celebrated. And you've got to also celebrate in a way that resonates with your employees. So, as we spoke about in the communication section, the vast majority of your workers are or will be millennials or Generation Z. And we know that this contemporary group, they grew up online. So, in order to recognize these folks effectively, you've got to meet them where they are and recognize them in ways that are meaningful to them. And so our old school paper-based programs simply are not going to cut it. Technology is their friend, so technology needs to be your friend too. Our world is now remote, our world is now online, and your recognition program needs to follow suit. That's how you're going to be the most effective as it relates to recognition. And then finally, I promised you a strategy. So here's how all of this comes together in your day-to-day world. And about now, Jim is going to provide a link in the chat box to a one-page PDF file where you can download the 21 manager action items and share them inside of your organization. Because bottom line, this content needs to be put into the hands of your managers so they can execute on it in the trenches with the employees on their teams. And the most effective way for you to do this is to hold manager town hall meetings where you bring all of your managers together virtually. Please do not do this via email. You need to be a role model for two-way communication. You have to have a two-way conversation with your managers so they have the opportunity to talk, to ask questions, to express any concerns. My gosh, to thank you for bringing a strategy to the table about how to get the most out of their remote workers because they were wondering how to do that and they had no idea where to begin. And in a perfect world, a senior leader in your organization would lead this town hall meeting. Why? Because when senior leaders speak, people listen. It's just the truth. It's an organizational dynamic that has been with us for decades. It's an organizational dynamic that will be with us for decades. We're not going to be able to shake that. So during this town hall meeting, your senior leader is going to discuss the benefits of keeping remote workers productive and engaged. And then you're going to share the manager action item list so they know the choices that they have in each of the 3 areas. So it's really important that the list of 21 action items, it's not a mandate. You need to communicate to your managers that they should think about the list like a menu in a restaurant. Here are 21 options for you to choose from. Pick and choose the ones that you believe would be most effective for your team members on your team, and then execute on them. And then finally, I'm a measurement girl, and so is your CEO. And in the words of Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets improved. So you need a way to measure your manager's performance to ensure that you are on track as it relates to managing your remote workers effectively. And you can do this in one of 2 ways. First, you could always use your current employee engagement survey to track the sentiments of your remote workers by adding 1 question to your survey. Ask people to identify their work location. And then let's say you've got a question that says, where do you work? And it's either in the office or remote. You can then run your data based on only people who responded to the survey who said they're remote workers. That is a fantastic way for you to gauge whether or not engagement is trending up or down with your remote workers. And second, if you don't have an employee engagement survey, you could ask all of your remote workers 1 question every Friday. And that 1 question is this: I would recommend my company as a great place to work. The people who respond yes are engaged. The people who respond neutral are neither disengaged nor engaged. They're on the fence. The people who respond no are disengaged. This will enable you to track the sentiments of your remote workers in real time, so you know if your managers are making progress or if you need to go back to the drawing board and course correct. Then, as always, 2-way communication, my friends. You've got to be circling back with your managers. Keep the conversation alive. Share the results with them. Share the progress with them. Your goal should be to drive business results steadily, to increase engagement week after week, month after month, year after year, quarter over quarter. Your goal is to continually progress forward. And I trust that if you execute on this strategy and get your managers engaged in the trenches, that you can succeed. And now I'm going to turn it back to Michael, as Work Proud knows a thing or 2 about how to drive business results. Michael?
Thanks, Jill. I'm sure everybody got that energy from Jill. She's an excellent speaker, presenter, and has been doing this for her career. And if that's something interesting to you to apply to your organization, of course, we're going to provide Jill's contact details, some of her materials, and copies of the book, post that. So, an interesting summary observation from some of the points that Jill had raised, encapsulated by a statement from Oprah Winfrey that I think is quite telling, which is consistently, no matter whether she's interviewing George Bush Senior or Junior, if she interviewed both of them, Obama, Beyonce, housewives, firefighters, is every time the mic drops at the end, the interviewee says to Oprah, how did I do? They're looking for that validation. That validation is saying to a human being, hey, what you're doing is meaningful and you're doing it well. And that has a lot of value. And the reason why we got heavily involved in this sort of space of Work Proud is it's very underserved in the scheme of tactical executions that HR may pursue. This is an area that is not done as well as it could and should be. And so for the last 18 years, we've been helping companies through that. Interestingly, during the Work Proud period, we had some interesting results showing how activity and recognition during that has grown dramatically. And here is a data point where you can see on a slide just how much increased activity there's been during the COVID period. Jim, maybe you can help me with the slides. So here you're seeing at this juncture where the COVID first sort of really hit the US and the relative activity in a given client program. So that remote sort of response, that remote situation has driven up utilization across the board. So very briefly about us, some self-promotion, confluence of trends, and the confluence of two levels. One, the need and importance of recognition and appreciation has come somewhat to the forefront as a result of the remote circumstances that we're at. There's also the fact that in a lot of clients and companies that we work with, they've got a wellness program here, and they've got a formal recognition program here, and maybe a service anniversary thing here. Maybe somebody's doing stuff around safety and training. Too many different programs. I'm sure they were all created with the best intentions at the time. How do you bring them together so that it is a more consistent employee experience and a reinforcement of the employer brand? What are these experiences we're creating for employees? How do they complement each other? So we're in the business of helping companies, one, bring those programs together. Two, the advent of technology, the generation of the millennials coming through, and of course the fact that we're now, remote is bringing all that to the surface that says, these are the kinds of things that HR can influence. And of course the question is, is that what you want to do, etc. So we're building these client programs that are bringing various programs together. Usually the money and the budget, is already there in the organizations. They're being just distributed in various different ways. We help clients bring them all together. Usually there's a cost reduction associated with unifying. More importantly, there's an actual business outcome. So, here's a couple of case study briefly. Gables had very traditional old school leadership thinking that they had good recognition. Of course, their construct of good recognition was 140 employees out of some 1,500 would be brought together for a dinner once a year. The employees have no idea why they're really there, because of course they did something in February, and then in December they've been invited to come to some dinner. Became a bit more of a popularity contest, so it'd be the same people year over year. All the newbies coming into the company thought it was they never get invited. They didn't think it was, something serious. Anyway, so
it's like gym class. It's like not getting selected in gym class.
It's like gym class.
It is, and it sucks.
Don't bring that up again, Jill, because I was the guy that was always at the end. I was very popular. Right? So, but anyway, so they brought these, so the new HR leadership comes in and says, guys, the old school way of doing it is not the right way. They brought them all together, from a standpoint of, why are we spending the money this way? They're still doing some more formalized events. Like the objective is not to throw out everything just for the sake of it. It's let's keep what's really good and used and has value, and let's otherwise repurpose the budget where we see it fit. So they've driven great success in terms of their engagement surveys, in terms of the daily vibe to your illustration before, where they're sort of surveying the population. They've had a significant impact. They've got a measurable ROI before it was just throwing money, into the air in the hope that it actually does something. A lot of reporting. Macy's, I know my thoughts and best wishes go out to those guys. They've had a hell of a tough time, in this period. They had COVID, and then they report to us about some of the stores and the damage, etc. But anyway, they had a big years of service program on one side. They had an employee referral program that was run by this group. They had sort of store level recognition activities happening over here. There's some coaching program over there. They're all run by different parts of the organization. Summary, they brought them all together under a common platform umbrella, significantly reduced the operating costs, increased the employee engagement surveys and scores, had a reportable measurement that they could go back to the CEO. And wouldn't you know, once it was in place, the CEO said, which HR people put this together? This is fantastic, and they're a continued user.
Exactly.
So our business basically is we do this for quite a lot of people. We've been doing it for a long period of time, and our sort of shtick in the marketplace is, we help companies sort of take their ideas and bring it to life There's a lot of configuration and customization available, so it's not like they're buying some software platform and saying, you know, here's this idea of recognition. It's more an approach that says, how do we use this technology and this expertise and this learning, and how do we bring it together to create a program that ultimately is trying to answer a question: are these experiences we're creating for employees making them proud of their work and proud of their company? And if so, we're going in the right direction. So, you know, wanted to just bounce briefly off. We've got a few minutes left, and there may also be some questions, you know, and Jim will facilitate those. But, you know, considering everything that's happened, you know, in this year, and both economically, I guess, virally, and even also in some of this question from the, you know, the D&I perspective, you know, it is taking recognition, something that's more relevant or less relevant. Don't want to see it, you know, self-serving. But what's your observations, Jill, on that?
So my observation is that it's fascinating to me. So I go around the world and I evangelize about the importance of having an amazing workplace culture, right? About employee engagement. And people like it and they listen and sometimes they execute on it. But I've never seen a time in my career where people are actually coming to me and saying, Jill, we've got people working remotely and we don't know how to manage them. And so, you know, when people physically sit beneath your nose, I don't think you think as often about how do I engage them? How do I reward them? How do we keep them connected? How do I communicate, right? You just sort of go through the motions when you're all physically co-located. But now that people are online and virtual, now in organizations, you know, there's no one around them, and they realize how disconnected they feel, and so they're realizing that their employees are probably also feeling this way, and for that reason it's top of mind. And so also, Michael, I saw a survey result that said, you know, asked HR practitioners, what are you most concerned about in this moment? And 80% of HR practitioners said two things. Number one, the health and well-being of my employees, and number two, keeping remote workers engaged, right? And we know that, you know, I have 4 pillars of my employee engagement strategy in my book. One of them is recognition. We know that that drives massive levels of engagement. And again, because of COVID and the disbursement of people, managers are actually now starting to think about how to do this well, when in the past, they knew it was important, but it wasn't top of mind.
Right, and it's probably going to be, what should we say, accelerated or augmented by the fact that it's going to be the end of the year. It'll come up. And what are we going to do for bonuses and incentives? Well, I'm assuming that, you know, for like many of our HR, you know, clients, they're struggling with just the maintenance question of, you know, existing programs and employee populations, what to say and do with them. Now they're going to have this question around, well, we don't have any bonus budget. How are we going to, what kind of message, you know, I don't know if you have any comments or thoughts on that, Jim. You know, what kind of message are we going to tell our high performing people that we want to retain?
Yeah, so, you know, again, we know that only 20% of people get out of bed in the morning and go to work strictly for a paycheck. 80% go for the connection, making a difference, adding value, etc. You know, however, having said that, you still need to show your employees that you're making them a priority and that you're meeting their needs, because if not, again, we can see that there are extraordinary organizations out there that are hiring in droves. And so, absent of a merit increase, absent of a large bonus pool, I think organizations absolutely have to think about creative ways to let people know that we appreciate you, we acknowledge you, you matter to us, we want you to stay here, we want you to be a part of our future. And so, you know, a recognition program pales in comparison price-wise to a massive merit pool and a bonus pool, right? Companies spend millions, sometimes billions of dollars on things like that. And so the good news is organizations have an option. They have a choice that we know will still drive massive levels of engagement.
Right. Well, thanks, Jill, for, you know, today spending the time with the audience. I think we're coming to the end of the hour, and I know Jim had a housekeeping moment or two, but you know, on behalf of all the folks at Work Proud, thanking you, Jill, for your time, thanking all the audience for spending some time in your busy day, wishing everybody best wishes through these difficult times, family, friends, and of course your employees as well.